Welcome to our Allowance Zoominar for the month of April. Our topic today is relationships, and I'm Kathy Williams here with Betsy McLaughlin, who's going to join shortly. And please, if at any time you have any questions, just unmute yourself and let us know. Let's see. So, yeah, a little bit about us. We're both access consciousness facilitator. Sorry. And we're both authors in the book Relationships Done Easy. In fact, I created that relationships book after the idea just kind of came to me, and I had a conversation with it, and I knew that it wanted to be created. So there are 22 authors in the book, each with their own stories about relationships, what they did that didn't work, what they did that worked, the tools that they've used, and everyone is associated with access consciousness in some way. So there are a lot of access tools in the book. So let's see. We have a monthly call that's on Allowance or Zoominar, rather. And so if you'd like any of the archives, we're happy to send those to you. We have them about bodies. We have them about money. We have another one on relationships. And they're just designed to get us into more allowance. And allowance is non-judgment. This space where you're not judging yourself or anyone or anything or even life. And that doesn't mean you're a doormat. Doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. But you're not in judgment. And from that space of not being in judgment, you can actually address what comes up in your life much faster and much easier than if you're in judgment of it. Because when we're judging, we're either saying, yes, this way is right, good, perfect, and correct, or no, it's wrong, bad, and awful. So we have these two polarities, and you can think of them as like the banks on a stream. So if one side is the positive polarity and the other side is the negative polarity, if you're, let's say, rowing your boat down the stream merrily, right, like the song says, if you stop at either one of the banks, you collect rocks in your boat, and then your boat doesn't go as quickly. So if you look at little kids are in allowance. They're not judging. They might make a turtle picture that doesn't look anything like a turtle, and they're completely happy with it. They might have a misunderstanding with another child, and then 5 minutes later, they're playing happily together. So they don't carry around their rocks in bags on their back. And that's one of the things I talked about in my chapter on in the book, Relationships Done Easy. Like when my husband used to judge me or make some critical comment, I would almost like file that away for future reference instead of being like, okay, well, that's his point of view at a particular moment in time. And I'll give you an example. So there was one time where we were at a party, and he was following me home from the party in a different car because he had driven from work and I had driven from somewhere else. We met at the party, and then to go home, he followed me. And after, when we met, we actually met at the beach. We didn't go home. And he said to me, "You were driving so slow," and he was kind of critical of my driving. And I kind of filed that away for a future reference instead of being like, oh, wow, that was his point of view in that 10 seconds. And that's okay. Like, it has nothing to do with me. It has more to do with his mood and how he's feeling than about me and my driving. So that's kind of a different perspective from most criticism that we get. We usually make it about us, and really it has more to do with the person who's saying that point of view, then it really has to do with us. So we can talk today about romantic relationships. We can talk about relationships with kids. We can talk about any kind of relationships that come up for you that you judge. And there's a process called the judgment process. And Gary Douglas and Dane here developed it together when the story goes that Dane, hi Betsy.
Hello.
You're in Maggie's.
I know. I'll rename myself.
So I'm talking about the origin of the judgment process and the fact that the judgment process came about when Dane was judging Gary. It was many, many years ago. And Gary came up and he was like, I can't be your friend anymore because you judge me too much. And real friends don't judge each other. And so Dane was like, whoa. And they came up with this judgment process. And it goes like this. There are 4 questions to it. What do you judge about someone? So let's say, what do I judge about Betsy? Okay. And then we would pock and pod that. And then what do I judge about me in regard to Betsy? And I might be like, well, I feel like nothing or whatever. And then pock and pod that. And we'll talk about what does pock and pod that mean if you're not familiar with that. And then what do you judge about sex with that person? So what do I judge about sex with Betsy? And then pock and pod that. And then what do I judge about me in regard to sex with Betsy? And then pock and pod that. And you're like, whoa, sex with her? Like, what does that mean? Why would you ask about that? And really, it's because in this reality, sex has a lot to do with receiving. Receiving is one of the very, very few ways that we receive in this reality. So especially when I ask you, like, what do you judge about sex with that person? It brings up a lot. I mean, people think, well, it's cold, it's heartless, it's distant, it's non-existent, it's whatever comes up, and then you can pock and pod that and clear it. So what do I mean by pock and pod? And who are Dane and Gary anyway? And Dane, Gary Douglas is the founder of Access Consciousness, and then Dane here is the co-creator, just because he's come up with a lot of things, kind of like the judgment process. And they've just created this enormous body of work that's very potent in changing things. So that is Access Consciousness. And this process is amazing. I mean, I've used it to change my relationship with my husband, my relationship with parents. I used it with a client today, and I think yesterday. You know, I mean, it's a very, very useful process. So, and then pock and pod. Betsy, would you like to explain a little bit about pock and pod?
Yes. So I apologize for being a couple minutes late. I was putting out a fire. And so did you explain the clearing statement or?
No.
Okay. Awesome. So we are both certified facilitators with Access Consciousness. Yes.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Am I the only one? I can't actually.
Oh, we're not hearing you.
Well, you just got muted, but we were hearing you, Janitha. Did you have a question for us?
Okay, let us know. We're here.
Okay, yeah, we're here. We do have a lot of people who've signed up for the call. A lot of them listen to it afterwards. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
I've even had people say, you need to do it later in the day.
So we use the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement, which is the right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all 9 shorts, boys and beyonds. And that is designed to bypass your logical mind and clear the energetics of whatever is sticking you or whatever a point of view is, and it's something that you can get further explanation at theclearingstatement.com. We know that it works for us. It's a huge contribution, right, Kathy? So we do use it throughout our calls.
Yeah, it really does bring up the energy and then clear it away. Kind of like a magic eraser, allowing you to start from scratch. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Or like the defrag on your computer, right?
We'll say the clear statement. You are also welcome to just say "Pak and Pravdat." Choose what works for you. That's a potent tool for changing things, including relationships.
Absolutely.
So, Betsy, tell me a little bit about. I know some of your history with your husband, including your history. Would you tell your story about cooking and having him cook and the way he cooks compared to the way you cook?
Oh, too funny. Yeah. So my husband is a good cook, and I'm very, very grateful that he is. And we do cook completely differently. When I cook, I clean as I go. From my point of view, and of course, it's the only point of view, right? That's how I used to function, right? I would think my point of view is, hey, clean as you go so you don't have a big mess at the end. Even at the end, there's usually still quite a bit of cleaning. My husband does not do it that way. He is like a swirling whirl of devilish, cyclone in the kitchen, and cabinets are left open, and he uses every pot, and there's just mess on the walls and on the floors and on the counter. And I walk in and I'm like, oh my God, like Hurricane Dan just came through here. So,
our husband's name is Dan. So
yes. Hurricane Dan just came through. So, and I used to get really upset about it and be just like, and I would get passive aggressive and stomp away, get pissed off, and just be like, this is just, and I could start fights, or I would be quiet and not say anything and give him the silent treatment, and I could do everything, right? And I was a master at it.
He didn't cook the correct way. I mean,
right? Like, how many different ways can I find to pick at him? Forget the fact that he's cooking, right? That he's contributing to the household in that way. So now, like, now I laugh at it. I have these wonderful tools where I realize that I have a choice of how I'm reacting to what I walk in on. Well, number one, I can turn around and walk back out, right? I can roll up my sleeves and help out. I can, if other people are around, I can ask them to pitch in, and there's a lot of different options, right? There's not just one option. So in that, it certainly has saved both of us a lot of angst that we don't have to get into fights about it anymore. So, yeah.
So was there a turning point for you with that?
The turning point was I just couldn't stand how I was being anymore. It was like, I'm just being so, I just wasn't being a very nice person around it. And I didn't like that, who I was being, and looked at, not even just for that, but in a lot of different areas of our relationship. And that kind of could be like a little microcosm of a lot of ways of how I was responding. And I was going immediately to judgment, immediately to criticism, immediately to how he's doing everything the way I would not do it. And right, like,
you would not do it,
right? I wouldn't do it that way, right? So, and I just was like, something's got to give, like, I just don't want to live like this anymore. And so I really started examining my contribution to what was going on. Because it's certainly a lot easier to shine the spotlight and point the finger at somebody else than to be like, oh, I wonder what I'm doing to contribute to the tension and the anger and the silence and the slamming doors and all of that. So that was the turning point when I was like, hey, something's got to change.
Isn't that so cool? And
Yeah.
So when you chose different, what occurred with him?
He got happier too. Yeah, great question.
Imagine that. Imagine
right?
Someone's not being all pissy at you, that you become happier.
Right? Oh, when you're not being criticized and micromanaged.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? When and I was having this conversation with a client today about the fact that no one else is in charge of our experience. Okay, so you're in charge of whether you're thrilled that he cooked dinner or pissed off that he's leaving everything out in the kitchen. And, it took a moment for her to really get that her boyfriend is not in charge of her experience. Because she's like, no, he's in charge of he can definitely change my state of being. And so we looked at it and I said, okay, so if we're at a cafe and we're observing a table and a dog runs up to that table, and one person's like, oh, what a sweet puppy. It's so amazing. I'm so glad this puppy is here. And the other one's scared, terrified. Like, is the dog creating their experience or are they creating their experience? And she got it that way. She's like, oh, well, the dog is not creating their experience because one person's choosing to be thrilled and one person's choosing to be terrified.
Right.
So it's really their interpretation, their point of view that's creating their experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when she got that, she saw that her boyfriend cannot create her happiness or her unhappiness.
Yes. So true. So true. And I was just laughing, like the theme of our calls that we love to do is allowance, right? And so the situation that I described with my husband in the kitchen, was there any allowance in who I was being and how I was reacting to my husband's method of cooking? That would be a big fat no. Yeah. And the same thing with the dog. Like one person had allowance for the dog running up and actually was enjoying it, and the other person was not. Really cool example. So, Janitha, did you have a question? We're happy to answer anything that might be coming up for you. Okay, she's muted, so you can if you know how to unmute yourself, and we're happy to answer. So, what else can we talk about with allowance and relationship? I'm
having allowance of...
I think my computer just froze on me.
I said I'm having allowance of noisy people. We have all sorts of yard workers around making noise, so I just shifted positions. So this can apply, your spouse or boyfriend is not, or girlfriend for that matter, is not in charge of how you feel. Your child is not in charge of how you feel. One day a child might not listen to you and you get all angry, and another day a child might not listen to you and you're like, oh, well, he just didn't hear me. So what then is in charge of our experience? We are. And that's where allowance comes into play, right? Allowance. This is positive. This is negative. This is right. This is wrong. where none of that exists, because everything is just an interesting point of view. Okay? It's a point of view that you're holding at a moment in time, and that point of view can change. And when you're in allowance, when you allow it to just be an interesting point of view, an interesting thought even. I have a client who prefers calling it an interesting thought. It's like a cloud that comes. If you don't hold on to it, it's going to be gone in 10 seconds. So if you allow it just to be an interesting point of view, that means it's not fixed. It's not solidified. It's not, my husband is mean, forever. It's, oh, he felt mean for 10 seconds. And now he can be something totally different. Or my child never listens. Never. Never and always are these two things that don't actually exist, do they?
Never, ever.
So
I seem to be having some connectivity issues. Sorry.
Interesting point of view is such an amazing thing to be able to say to yourself every moment of every day. Interesting point of view, I have that point of view. Interesting point of view, I have that point of view about me. Interesting point of view, I have that point of view about my husband. Interesting point of view, I have that point of view about my child.
Yes.
And one thing for me that creates so much space, this morning, I'm sorry, I still have this yard noise. This morning, I was helping my children, and they watch a little PBS Kids, which is educational TV, in the morning. And the PBS Kids website was having challenges, and then it's, Mom, please help me with this website, and me trying to make breakfast and get the day going, and I felt really compressed. I felt like there were all these energies coming at me. And then what I just said was like, what am I aware of? What am I aware of?
Yeah.
Back off. And what I mean by back off, for me, that's give me space, like create space for me. And so when I did that, I stopped feeling so compressed, and I had more room to be responsive rather than reactive. When we're reactive, no one really benefits, including us. And when we're responsive, we're able to respond from a place of more clarity and a place of more allowance. When we're reactive, we're not in allowance. When we're responsive, we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, so much of our lives, that's been just kind of the default, right? Just reacting, being I have referred to myself as a firefighter. Like, sometimes I feel like a firefighter. All I'm doing is putting out fires, right? And, I'm sure you can relate to that, Kathy, whether it's, spilled juice or an upset client or whatever it is. Like, sometimes you feel like all you're doing is putting out fires. And I know when I feel like that, I feel very constricted. I don't feel like I'm in an expansive place, and I'm reacting. Okay, there's the fire here. Let me put it out. Okay, where's the next fire? And, and so when you're in that mode, it's almost like I said, you're saying, where's the fire? And being anticipating of where the fire is, and not being in allowance that, your client might be upset, and it probably has nothing to do with you, or your kid spilled red juice all over your freshly cleaned floor, or whatever it is, right? So what tips do you have that are coming right to the top of your mind when I say, like, how can you be in allowance? What tips can you use when you're faced with situations where you feel like you just have to put out a fire?
So one of the things that's really coming up for me right now is the fact that people who consider themselves really good problem solvers actually have to create problems to solve. So everywhere you've made yourself
right.
a really good problem solver, which means that you're creating problems so you can solve them. Will you destroy and uncreate that times a godzillion?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, wrong, good, bad, pet, talk, all 9 shorts, boys, and beyonds. And for you to define anything as a problem, when you define it as a problem, it solidifies it. It makes it a thing now. Okay, and when you solidify it as a problem, it becomes more immovable. It becomes more challenging to handle. And instead of making it less significant and less being like, and instead of asking, okay, what else is possible here? And that's a huge question that creates so much ease. What else is possible here? When you have a problem, when things don't seem to be going your way, try that one.
Yeah. And it's almost even the tool of stop it, of feeling like you're just the firefighter. What if you took a step back and be just like, okay, stop it. Stop going to the automatic response of what you've been used to, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen the Bob Newhart clip where a client comes in. It's called Stop It, and you can YouTube it. It's so funny. And she comes in and she wants to tell him her whole life story. And she goes, he says, I'll have you, I'll have you healed or solved, or I can't remember the exact words he used, in 5 minutes. And she's like, 5 minutes, but I have so many problems. And she starts talking about the problems. And then he lets her talk for like a minute or so. And then he goes, okay, I have 2 words for you. And she's like, do I need a pen? She pulls out a pen. He's like, sure, if you want to. And he's like, stop it. Right. And so then she just continues to want to talk to him about her problems. And he's just like, stop it. She's like, I get so upset about blah, blah, blah. Well, stop it. Right. So what that tool of stop it, sometimes when you realize what you're doing of the old thing that doesn't work for you anymore, and you're desiring to choose something different, stop it. Right. Take a step back and ask those questions that Kathy talked about already, like what else is possible here, right? What have I not considered? Is it with and what other questions can be asked?
Yeah, I love that. What question can I ask here that would change this? It's such a fun question because you don't have to know what question. You just ask, and then you get some awareness about what you can use. And you know what, a lot of us base our relationships on who we think the person was, so who they were last week or last year or last month or last decade. This is so and so, instead of being like, who are they today? Who am I today? I'm not the same as I was yesterday. So what if I had just landed kerplunk on planet Earth and I was interacting with this person for the very first time? And if I were interacting with this person for the very first time, I wouldn't have a lot of buttons, right? I wouldn't have a lot of past walls of separation or past muck, because it's just like, kerplunk, I just landed. Okay, who is this person? Let me get really curious about them. Let me get really curious about what they like today and what they don't like and who they are and what they're about. Because we think we know someone, and that idea we know them actually gets in the way of us seeing them for who they really are.
Yes. And so all the conclusions that we have made around what our relationships are, what our relationships aren't, what they should be, what they shouldn't be, and all the judgments we've made from all of those conclusions, could we now revoke or can't rescind, renounce, denounce, destroy, and uncreate all of them times a godzillion?
Yes.
Cool. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And truly, like, what else is possible is such a beautiful question to really get the energy of looking at what else is possible with every scenario. When you were talking earlier, Kathy, I kept hearing, and it's like somebody who's, like, is driving me crazy, that so-and-so is driving me crazy, so-and-so is driving me crazy, so-and-so is driving me crazy. And, it's really cool because we're all so aware. So I was picking up right on somebody else's point of view that somebody is driving them crazy. And as you're saying that, that's reaffirming that person's driving you crazy, right? And there's no question in that. And in Access, we love questions because questions will provide other possibilities. So one of the questions you could ask, if somebody's right, Janitha's saying, my children drive me crazy no matter how I try to calm them, right? So there's so many different questions, right, that we could be asking here when we're finding ourselves in that constriction of so-and-so is driving me crazy. And some of the questions could be, right, what else is possible here? What contribution can I be to them? What contribution can I be to myself? And what is possible beyond anything I have ever even imagined? And being that space of questions, you're going to find some weird things might show up, right, Kathy, from those questions?
Yeah. Yeah. So often, like, I really had challenges being a parent initially when my children were young. And one of the questions I started to ask was, how can I have more ease and joy with parenting? What would it take? Rather than how? What would it take to have more ease and joy with parenting? And I even wrote it in large letters on a chalkboard in my kitchen because it was like, like this intensity of, and so when I was in the intensity, I would look over and see, oh, okay, what would it take to have more ease and joy with parenting? And when we ask and you shall receive is a law of the universe. So it really does work. And I just kept asking, and life just kept getting easier. So everywhere you've made your children into people who need something of you rather than infinite beings who know what they require. And I have another clearing after this. Will you destroy and uncreate all of that times the godzillion? Wow. Right and wrong, good and bad, fun and fun, all nature, boys and beyonds. And what would it take to out-manipulate your kids for all eternity? Everything that doesn't allow that. Destroy and uncreate it all.
Yes.
Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all
yes.
Boys and beyonds, because kids are so good at knowing exactly what's going to move us to give them what they want. And so so they can manipulate us very easily, whether it's by whining, whether it's by whatever it is, by being so super sweet, so sweet that we have to give them what they want. So they're great at manipulation, and they have no hesitation doing it with us, doing manipulation. And so what would it take for you to be more manipulative than they are with them?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, how can you out-manipulate your children, right? What lessons of manipulation can we learn from them, and how can we out-create that, right? And how much fun can we have with it all? Because a lot of the energies that we're talking about are not fun, right? When they're driving you crazy, when you're feeling frustrated, when you're putting out fires, when you're just in that, none of that is fun. None of that is, expansive. So what, and then another question I love asking is, like, when you see the insanity of what you're choosing, like me, choosing over and over again to get mad at my husband. It's like, what's right about this I'm not getting? And that is a question that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A lot of these questions really, if you try to analyze them, they don't make sense. And they contribute to changing the energies that you're desiring to change. So what's right about this I'm not getting? You might never hear an answer, or something could pop in and go, oh, I'm somehow, somewhere that I was making this more valuable or more vital than my time with them, right? Quality time. So, those are some other things that were just really popping in as you were talking, Kathy.
Yeah. Relationships are these things that are unavoidable, right? You go to the grocery store and there's relating between who checks you out and yourself. All of us have parents, whether they're alive or not. We have parents in some way, shape, or form. And so we're always relating to people. And so what have you made so vital, valuable, and real about the lies of relationship that keep you from seeing what's actually true? Everything that is that silly and will you destroy and uncreate.
Yes. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And so what have we made more vital? Like, when we go to the space of constriction and upset, are we making that more vital than our joy? Ouch. And everything that is, can we destroy and uncreate it? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Right? So what if we chose joy and happiness and ease and glory as what we choose to focus on? I wonder how that would change our reactions when they spill red juice on the floor. Right? And how can we get, another thing that popped in, Kath, is how can let's say whoever it is that are driving us crazy. Janitha says she's got 3 children. So how can we get them to be involved in changing whatever's going on? What questions can we ask our children or our husbands or whoever it is, our friends, our coworkers, if there's a situation that you see is coming up over and over again? How can we ask them to contribute to what we desire?
Yeah, I think that's huge, and especially if and not making it significant, but huge.
Wait a minute.
It's instrumental to engage others, and especially if our target is ease and joy, to be able to ask, okay, even if you're not asking them physically, asking them energetically, like, would you please contribute to my ease and joy, and watch what shows up, because there's definitely a shift in energy when you invite people to contribute, even on an energetic level, and when you acknowledge where they're functioning from. So if you haven't taken the foundation class, it's an Access Consciousness class that's amazing. And in that class, there are several things that help you identify, like, is someone being a rattlesnake? And a rattlesnake is someone who's trying to poison you with their point of view. And when you just acknowledge that they're a rattlesnake, it doesn't mean you have to say, hey, you're being a rattlesnake. That probably wouldn't go over well. But just to acknowledge that, oh, that person is being a rattlesnake, shifts the energy. So asking a question, even though it's not verbal, can shift the energy. And so you can ask, what would it take for you to contribute to my ease and joy? What would it take for me to choose the kingdom of we, which does not mean the kingdom of them. It doesn't mean the kingdom of just you. It means all of you. And so you see, you see parents doing the kingdom of everybody else when they're shuffling off their children to everything the children want to do and never take a moment for themselves. That would be the kingdom of everyone else. And we think that.
Correct. Yes.
So often we think that in order to choose for me, I have to shut out everyone else. And everyone else has to go away and, let me just choose for me. And that's not the best either, because we're constantly relating, and so you can ask, like, what would create the greatest? What would create the greatest? And for me, that means the greatest possibilities, the greatest future, the greatest consciousnness. What would create the greatest for all of us? What choice would create the greatest here?
Yes. And it does, that includes nurturing yourself, nurturing your children, nurturing your loved ones. And nobody gets excluded from that nurturing.
Yeah.
We tend to, especially as parents, we tend to put our children's needs completely above our own. And we get to the point where we forget what our own desires are, because we're so used to just doing for our kids, really, no matter what their age. I've got my son is older, and I still find myself like, oh, what would he want to do? And it's like, no, how about what I would like to do as well, and what could we do that would be fun for both of us, right? So everywhere that we have cut ourselves off from what we desire to the point where we don't even know what we desire, could we destroy and uncreate all that?
Yes.
Cool. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And truly, how can it be harmonious for everyone? Well, that doesn't mean to say sometimes you're not going to choose what your children want and you would rather be doing something else. And where can it be balanced with, okay, I tell you what, and it could be a conversation with your kids, like, they want to go to the movies and you'd rather, go to the park. Okay, have the conversation. And whatever is decided, what can everybody be, how can this turn out greater than I can never even imagine, is another question I love asking. And ask your children to be involved in the discussion, in the conversation, right? Instead of automatically saying no, explain to them, hey, I would rather do whatever it is. And this is what you guys want to do. Now, how can this work out so everybody is happy? What do you got? And kids are, as we were talking about earlier, right? They're great manipulators. They are great with coming up with ideas. Right? And so how do we involve everyone in the kingdom of we that Kathy talked about earlier?
I love that, Betsy, because, especially with kids are so creative. Often they'll come up with ideas that you hadn't even considered, and that just expands the buffet from which we can choose. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I hadn't considered that possibility. And everywhere you've made your life and your reality an either or reality, will you destroy and create that times a godzillion?
Absolutely.
Right, wrong, good, bad, all nine, bad, box, shorts, boys, and beyond. So it's either them or me, either the park or the movie, either this or that. And right. Being like, wow, what if we have time to do both? What if we do one today, tomorrow? What if we, this is not an either or reality. This is a universe of infinite possibilities. And so everywhere you've cut yourself off from those infinite possibilities by deciding you have to figure it all out, will you destroy and uncreate?
Yes.
Wow. Right, wrong,
You
get
mean,
back. Nine shorts, boys and mans. I mean, for me...
You mean we don't have to have all the answers, Kathy?
It might take a long, long time to get all those answers. So, like, who has all the answers? Nobody. Questions, lots of questions, and awareness, lots of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of answers. You know, so for my own life, I was making it an either or reality. Or early on, like I can either spend all this time with the kids or be doing what I would like to be doing, you know, in terms of business, instead of like what is the greatest for all of us. And that's not only with kids, but that could be with your parents also. You know, I have a friend who lives on my island, which is Maui, Hawaii, and her parents live on Oahu. And she works here 3 days a week, and her parents are starting to need care. So, you know, does she move over there? Does she get caregivers for them? What are the possibilities for her being able to both do what works for her and serves her needs and desires and is fun for her, and also take care of what's required for her aging parents? And, you know, there are infinite possibilities, and we forget that. So everywhere you've cut yourself off from the infinite possibilities by deciding that you need to abandon you, will you destroy and uncreate all of that times a gazillion? Oh.
Yes. Wow.
Shorts, boys and beyonds.
There is a lot of energy there, Kathy. Can you do that clearing again? There's just a lot there.
Everywhere you cut off the infinite possibilities by deciding that you need to, I don't even remember.
Fill in the blank, right?
Figure it all out. Will you destroy and create all of that times the godzillion?
Yes.
Right, wrong. All nine.
Yeah. I love it. She's having clearing a lot of unconsciousness there. And, you know, I really do love that. So, my brain just went, and I lost the thought. So
that's why I was like, what was the clearing? Everywhere you've decided
I love it.
that your relationships have to be serious, that you have to go about the relationship in the same way you've been going about it. Will you destroy and uncreate that times the godzillion?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, just imagine this. My client this morning is in a long distance relationship, and she said it's really changed. You know, initially it was long distance, then they lived together, and now it's long distance again, and it's really changed a lot. And so, you know, what if she didn't have to approach the relationship in the same way every time? So what if one day instead she put on Skype and she was upside down and talking to him? I mean, that would just change things. Or what if she did it like in her lingerie? And, you know, I mean, so like there are so many ways where you can just throw a curveball into the norm.
Yeah.
And when you shake things up and you don't function from the norm anywhere, people start to think different. Not differently. Mm-hmm. People start to think different. And like different thoughts, different ideas about you, different ideas about the relationship. It's just like one little difference can create a whole set of new, I mean, every choice creates new possibilities. Every choice creates awareness. So what can you be or do different that would create greater possibilities in your relationship right away? Everything that doesn't allow you to destroy and uncreate it all.
Oh, yeah.
Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds.
Well, and you know what else was coming in, Kathy, was like how much fun could we have involving our children in questions that we've never thought to ask them? For instance, you know, like it's something that you're always dreading doing, like making dinner. What would happen if you asked your kids, "Hey, you guys want to make dinner tonight?" Like really, like, and would that shock the heck out of them, right? And what? Who knows what they would even say? You want to? Okay, you guys are in charge of dinner tonight, and then you've got to be willing and be an allowance of whatever it is that they create or want to come up with, and it could be, you know, a cupcake and a cookie, right? But like, just as you said, like throwing something completely different into the mix of whatever the norm is. And Janitha says her kids would say no. Okay, cool. Then I guess we're not eating dinner tonight, right? Or whatever it is, like, you know. And again, going back to that question of how can we outcreate the manipulators that we live with if we have children, because they are amazing manipulators. And when they want something, they do not stop until they get it, right? If mom says it, if mom says no, dad will say no. If dad says no, grandma will say, you know, they just keep asking. And so where have we just like given up? So everything that is, can we destroy and uncreate it?
Yes.
Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And Kathy saying in the chat, you know, could you say, what would you choose for dinner? Right? If the kids say no and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to cook dinner. What would you choose? And we'll make that and let them, you know, like if this, and just really be willing to play with it and experiment. And like, how much fun can you have putting your kids off guard, right? Because they're not going to expect that. Kathy, what would your children do if you said to them today, okay, you guys are making dinner tonight. What are we going to have for dinner?
I think they really like it being asked questions. So if I were to say, okay, you know, what are we going to have? I know one of my kids would be like, okay, here's the cookbook. And he'll look through it and he'll be like, that. And he definitely has a thing he picks from the cookbook every time. I don't know why. You know, they love to be engaged. Yeah. They don't love to be engaged if I ask, like, would you like to help me make dinner? They're not into that. But if it's like, hey, you guys are in charge. What are we making for dinner? They definitely like to be in charge. So if you're in a
because how many times our children just, they're not allowed to be in charge of anything, right?
Yeah. It's so funny. I was teaching my son.
Sorry. So there's a delay going on. Yeah.
I was teaching my son about choice this past week, and I said, you know, you have the ability to choose what you everything you do and create and be in the world. And he was like, no, I don't. I only get to watch do video games on certain days. I was like, touche. However, you get to choose.
Yeah, they do like to put that right back at us.
Every moment you get to choose how you feel. So what if we even recognized that in every relationship we have, we're not in charge of how the other person feels. They're in charge of that.
Say that again, please.
In every relationship. With your mom, with your father, with your kids, with your spouse, with your cousin, with your client, you're not in charge of how they feel. They are.
True story. Yeah. So everywhere we feel like we're responsible for every thought, feeling, and emotion that they have, could we destroy and uncreate that?
Yes.
Yay. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. So when my son, when I tease him, like, hey, when he'll come in and say, what's for dinner? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not cooking tonight. What is for dinner? And he might go, hey, I'll buy pizza. Okay, awesome. Right?
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah. What would it take for you to just get really curious about your relationships this week and be like, hey, I wonder what chaos I can throw in, what question I can throw in, what difference I can be in this relationship, just right now, and see what that creates.
But Kathy, isn't chaos bad?
Chaos is the creative energy. And the volcano is chaotic. So we went to the volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii last week or 2 weeks ago. And so you could see it bubbling in the cauldron, and
wow,
chaotic. Like, it's not going to bubble in the same place in the very same way. And then when the volcano erupts, it's not always going to erupt to the east. Sometimes it might erupt to the south. Sometimes it might erupt to the east. Like, it's chaotic. It's changeable. It follows the flow, and it follows the flow of the land. And so whenever and it's the energy of creation, right? That is Earth actually creating an island. And so anytime you throw in a question, that's inserting chaos. That's creating a new possibility where there wasn't one before, or where you didn't see it before. So
love that.
Yeah, totally play with that and imagine the volcano.
Yes.
The volcano.
Love it.
So I'm wondering if we might like to make next month's allowance call all about parenting, because it kind of plays off this, and there's plenty of points of view we have about kids and parenting and ourselves with that. And
that sounds good.
We do it. First Wednesday of the month, which would happen to be the 3rd.
Awesome.
May 3rd.
It's funny. I thought for a minute you were going to say, let's do an allowance seminar on volcanoes.
That too. Gosh.
Oh, so how can we infuse that energy of the volcano into, right?
Chaos is fun.
I love it. All right. So we have, that's great. Janitha says that's great. Parenting. So you will get the recording. We'll send it out, and all of the questions and tools and possibilities here. We'd love to hear from you. Like, let us know how it goes to, what can you do to out manipulate whomever you are allowing to manipulate you right now, right? Whoever that is. And to nurture yourself, nurture your relationships, be 50-50 in the kingdom of we, and see what else starts to show up as if by magic.
How much fun can we have? Aloha. Have a great one.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Especially if you guys are on the recording too. We'd just love to hear from you on the Imperfect Brilliance Gmail, or that's imperfectbrilliance@gmail.com, or on Facebook, however you like to be in touch. All right. Have fun with your relationships.
Janitha, thank you for joining us live, and everybody else who's going to be listening later. We so appreciate you guys. Have a great day. What else is possible, my beautiful friends, as Dane always says. Thanks, Kathy.
Aloha. Thank you.